Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today is the day that we kind of unveil what this is actually going to look like. So far we have torn this bug down and we've done some fabrication on a frame. Now we're finally putting the two together and we can show you guys what the bug looks like as it becomes ROKBUGY. So we have a couple things on our agenda today. First is we are cutting the rest of the body mounts off of this JKU frame, which we shortened earlier, and we're cutting the cross member out of the front, and we're actually cutting the cross member in the rear, spreading this frame open and getting the frame rails to line up with the body before we make new body mounts. Once we're done with all of that, we're gonna go over here to the pan and we're gonna cut the pan out of this bug and get this pan set up in there, get the body back on this frame, and figure out where we're going from there with a temporary cross member and the body temporarily mounted on the frame. So today is actually a really big day for fabrication. This is all like the heavy duty cut and paste work. There's no fine detail work here yet. The very first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get started by welding this frame together a little bit better before we start cutting the cross members out, because we wanna keep it square, and right now it's only tack welded in place. So without further ado, let's jump in and get started on this. Okay, so the frame is tacked together. That was actually really quick and easy. Now comes the hard part. These are the body mounts we're removing. So Steph is gonna get a cutting wheel out and cut those off, but obviously the frame is supported by the body mounts right now. So we're gonna work together. I guess we'll set the phone on a stand or something. I'll lower this down and get the bug off of it, and then we'll work on this frame here. So that is the next step, but this is what the tack welds look like. I just have at least 3 tack welds on each end. Once we start spreading this frame out, the last thing that I want is to lose our square. Like, I don't want the frame rails to shift and then I have to do a bunch of cross measurements to make sure that this frame is square. So it's tack welded good enough now where it shouldn't move, because eventually this cross member is coming out today, and that's kind of what's holding all of this in line. So at least this center section. Grinding is very loud. We cut the body mounts off of the frame, and now they're all ground smooth, and the next part to cut out is this cross member here. Am I yelling?
Yeah.
Once the cross member's cut out, we're gonna cut that back and spread this frame open. So I just gotta cut that and clean it real nice. We're moving right along. It is hot, it is loud, I'm covered in little metal bits.
Hungry.
Yeah.
You're yelling.
Yeah. And the grinder, where's he out?
Hands. I have small hands.
Yeah, I'm like rigor mortis hands. I got more to go. Okay, so here's where we're at. Body mounts have been removed. Cross member has been removed. And then what we just did is we grabbed the automotive dismantling blade on the Sawzall and we cut this thing clean down the middle. So now we're gonna spread this out and we're gonna make the body line on the bug and the frame match. So we'll put in a different temporary cross member. It's going to be very difficult to keep the frame square at this point, so we'll be doing a lot of math, but the end result will be a frame and body that match to create new body mounts. And then we're going to take that pan and mount it on top of this frame. Wish us luck.
One,
All right, guys, so we have progressed quite rapidly through this so far. We have everything cut out of the middle, and the last update was that we cut the back of the frame. Now we've spread the frame to the width that we need for the body and body mounts on the bug body. To get the back end where we need it, we're actually pie cutting this frame and sucking it back in. We have temporary cross members in place to keep the frame width where we need it, right here in front of the rear wheel wells. This part here has to come back in. Currently it's about 10 inches spread apart on the back, and we actually have to get that probably closer to about -4 or 5 inches to get it where it needs to be, because of the back end of the body tapers so much. So right now what I'm doing is tracing out some pie cuts on this so that we can get the bandsaw in here, and our next step will be being as careful as we can to cut these little pieces out of the frame, pull it together, make sure that it's a square triangle, and weld this in place. Yeah, it's going. Now we have 2 pie cuts in the frame. The tail end of the frame will be longer because of the pie cut, because it was a kind of a square cut and then an angled cut, so the angle cut will fold over and be just a little bit longer than the square cut. We'll lap weld those and find a new cross member for the back. Make sure that we're even on our fold here, and then this will taper in to kind of match the bug a little bit better. But holy crap, what a lot of framework for one day. We have to make sure when we're all done that everything lines up. Both sides are the same length, that they're square. If you drew a line down the middle, it should be perfectly symmetrical. Butterfly effect, is that what I'm thinking? We're getting there, we're really close. My next step is to find Mr. Nick Ashby so that he can help me pull these in. It's looking good. Well, we're doing really good.
Yeah.
Let me show you the bug, and then I'll show you what we're about to do on the pan. So we got those pie cuts done, and then we cut the frame. These are currently tacked in place, but we had to measure them so that we know that they're equally tapered inward. I'll show you from the back here. So you can see that these come in, and now we're gonna go get material that'll either fit inside or outside of that. We'll see what the metal supply company that we use has available to us, but we're gonna somehow either internally or externally sleeve that frame right there and then bring that frame farther out. But we had to bring it in to kind of match what we're working with here, so you can kind of see that makes sense. Now over to Steph. She has a jack underneath the back of the pan.
We're jacking.
We're jacking, baby. Slacking and jacking. And right here we have some red lines on the back of the pan. This is where we're going to cut the back end off. So the I guess, what was it, the transmission mounts here and the motor mounts on the back there on the stock bug. None of that's going to be used on this project, so we just need what's going to attach to the back of the body, because we're going to be using these new pans we put in and seam sealed. So that's where we're at. We just got this jacked up and we're ready to cut the back end off. And then once we get that done, we're going to move over to the front, and we're actually not keeping the whole pan. We're cutting like a foot off the front of the pan. So, you ready to get to work?
Cutting and pasting.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Oh, cut that part out.
I'm not cutting that out. So we just put the deck lid, or the trunk lid, I guess you would call it, the engine cover for the, we put the back of the bug back on back here, because we have to mock up where our frame rails are going to be coming out and squaring off on this end. Once we got that on, or I guess while we were doing this, Nick put the laser level inside of here and marked out lines where our firewall needs to go. The new firewall, because we're actually cutting out most of this to make way for a much larger front engine mounted vehicle. The Volkswagen originally had the engine in the back, so it wasn't designed to have anything up front. This used to be the trunk. But now I'm going to cut this out. I'm not going to cut right here, because these are actually like wheel wells, and we want to keep these. But I'm going to cut basically where all the seam sealer is, and then down the front here, and we're going to squeeze a motor up here, and this will all be a solid panel firewall. So where our seats originally were mounted, they're gonna, basically everything that moves back here is gonna move the driver back as well. So the dash will have to come out, the seat will have to move back, the pedals will be right here, and so the steering wheel will be much farther back, the seat will be farther back, all to make room for an engine up front in a vehicle that was never designed to have an engine in the front. So that's what we're doing now. I've got the cutting wheel, and I'm gonna get rid of that old firewall where the fuel tank used to be, and then we'll catch back up with you. I think we're pretty much done for the day. Once I do that, we're gonna put this body back on the pan, get everything mocked up, and then we'll come back on Memorial Day and get right back to it. So now the firewall has been removed, and Steph is bolting the pan back to the body so that we can get it back on the frame. Now I think what we're gonna have to do, I don't know yet, but I think what we're gonna have to do is remove the top of this tunnel to make more space. I'm not sure if we're gonna keep that yet, but we have this bolt kit from one of the local VW parts houses. And so we're putting this back on without the gasket right now, so everything's in mock-up. Obviously all the metal is bare and everything, but we're getting this mounted up, and then it's gonna go back on this frame again. And I think once we get that mounted, that's gonna be it for today for us, because we are pretty dirty and tired now. So the pan is on the frame, and I have the PRP seat mocked in place, sitting on 2 roto packs right now to give us a good idea of where we're going to be sitting in this thing once it is a little bit more put together. Initial thoughts, we are way back. This is where my arm is. So my shoulder is in the back window here. The dash will have to come out. We'll be putting pedals here. Where I cut this is where that firewall will be. There's gonna be a huge V8 in front of us. We got a lot of stuff to fit in a little car.
We have a lot of stuff to fit in a little car.
A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. There's another seat here.
Where does the ice chest go?
I guess in the very back.
But then how do we get to it?
I don't know yet.
That's what your passenger is for.
We're thinking about the really important stuff here.
I'm standing where the fuel cell will be. Above me will be the radiator and the fans. I think I could put a cooler here. You still have a ton of room too. Like you can lift
Yeah,
the seat up.
surprising amount of headspace in here, and the seat is sitting on
6.5 inches of rotopack.
6.5 inches of roto packs.
I'm leaving now.
All right. And that wraps it up for today. We will be back in the shop bright and early tomorrow to keep cutting on this little car and imagining what it'll be like when it's someday finished. See you guys then. Steph wants to say something.
Jarrett hates me.
Why?
He hates me.